Hawa. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hey, thanks for tuning in once again. I appreciate you guys doing that. Want to go ahead and keep reading from this book we've been reading. We're almost done. All right. I know a lot of you appreciate this series right here we got going. This book got a lot of drop. This book, again, is Researches into the Lost Histories of America, or the zodiac shown to be an old terrestrial map in which the Atlantic ISO is delineated so that light can be thrown upon the obscure histories of the earthworks and ruined cities of America. And this is by W.S. Blackett from 1884. And we are going to move on to chapter 27 today. And it says, Peru in its most ancient form, the sign of Lupus and its mythology. Page 265. Peru is a puzzle. When the Spaniards found Peru and published an account of it, they threw upon the tables of the learned one of the most perplexing historical problems they could ever had to solve. To find a country on the west coast of South America in possession of social and political institutions resembling in great measure the choicest models of European nations, and in some things excelling them, presented to the philosopher and statesman a very curious subject of thought. It seems impossible to believe that civilization so refined could exist out of Europe. Yet why should it be thought incredible that great centers of civilizing influences should shift their place? Are not the British people at the present time engaged in laying the foundations of a great nationalities at their very antipodes? Why should it be thought that the present distribution of busy, thriving commercial communities should necessarily be the same as that which existed in the vast past of the world's being? The practice of pictorial mapmakers of antiquity, and requiring that the name of the figure should clang with the ethnology of the country, makes it proper, in all cases, to search into the nomenclature of the lands portrayed. In the present instance, there is nothing to show what was the ancient name of Peru. The enquiry therefore fixes itself upon the races which have been discovered in the province. Peru, on a large scale, is inhabited at the present time by the Quichua race. About the Lake Titicaca is a large nation called Aymara, which includes Canchis, Canas, and other provinces. The Lupacas are said to be the chief race. The Mobinish and Itonamish, add along spelling, are also mentioned. The Latin word for wolf is lupus, and the word is employed in the zodiac. Here it is observable that the word Lupacas, the chief race in the land, clangs well with lupus. Guys, you guys hear that? The first mythic personage that must be put under the constellation of Lupus, the wolf, is Osiris. Plutarch says that Osiris took the form of a wolf. This brings him into Peru, and it is remarkable that an image of him has just been seen in the Peruvian cave. The first time that Osiris made his appearance in the tracing of myths in these pages was when he was a passenger in the boat of Fre. See page 92, all right? We read that already. He is now found turned into a wolf. In his legend, Osiris is judge of the dead and rules over the kingdom where the souls of good men were admitted to eternal felicity. Horus, his son, introduces the deceased into his presence, bringing with him the tablet of Thoth. Horus is assisted by Anubis, the dog-headed god, brother of Macedo, the wolf. But what is meant by Osiris? This question is answered by Clemens Alexandrina when he says Skiaka is the germ of Osiris. Skiaka is the Tibetan Buddha, so that Osiris is the embodiment of the Grand Lama. He and his sons are missionaries all around the world, planting hermitages and building lamasaries everywhere. The next character that comes under the wolf is Macedo. Macedo was a son of Osiris. He had a share in the divine honors, which were paid to his father. He was represented clothed in a wolf's skin. This is one of the curious things that disclose themselves in the localization of the gods. Macedo gives name to the Macedonians. It will be remembered that in the 4th chapter, page 33, an account is given of the discovery of a stone in Brazil, showing that the Macedonians had been there in the time of Alexander, son of Philip, 63rd Olympian. The banner of the Macedonians was a wolf. Okay, you guys hear that? And again, most likely seen it in reverse. This is the true old world. According to the principle of this treatise, Romulus and Remus must be put in this location as they were brought up by a she-wolf. The story of Remus and Romulus as men is quite unintelligible. This mistake is corrected by zodiacal localization. Demonology corrects the mistake when it makes Romulus to be a child of the devil and grand magician. Mars, in fact, who was his father, was but a demon. After being established in his kingdom in the presence of his army, there was a great whirlwind, and the devil carried him to another kingdom. In the classical mythology, Romulus was a son of Mars, and Ilia, grandson of Numitor, king of Alba. He was born at the same birth with Remus. These two children were thrown into the Tiber by order of Amulius, who usurped the crown of his brother Numitor. But they were preserved in accordance to Florus. The river stopped its course, and a she-wolf came and fed them with her milk till they were found by Faustulus, one of the king's shepherds. After a description of the building of the city and the histories connected with it, the laws of Romulus are mentioned as follows. Romulus divided the lands he conquered. One part was preserved for religious uses, to erect temples and to consecrate altars. The other was appropriated to the expenses of the state, and the third part was equally distributed among his subjects, who were divided into 3 classes or tribes. Romulus was ranked by the Romans among the 12 great gods. The mythology which compels the allocation of Remus and Romulus in Peru, in Peru, before the removal to Italy, again, before they were put in Italy, so originally from Peru, right, looks at first sight problematical, but there is much to justify it. Already has been seen that the Tupi Indians bear resemblance to the Roman soldiers. The Romaenas were a race of men in the region with language analogous to Latin. Okay, the Romaenas, right, from South America, that's the Indian tribe. And they're saying that their language is very analogous to Latin. In the next chapter, the Inca of Peru will be identified with Aeneas, whom the critic Niebuhr shows to have been the grandfather of Remus and Romulus. Then, the institutions of Romulus in Italy, as transcribed above, were precisely the same as those of the Inca of Peru, although dissimilar to those of all other nations. It is remarkable that Mr. Hawkes, in his Peruvian Antiquities, describes an idol in Peru of a name bearing a great resemblance to Remus. He says that at Lima is a Waka, right, a sacred place, a sort of god called Rimac. It is a human figure. It is in a magnificent temple. It has oracles by priests. The nation of Incas who occupy the valley worshipped it. In a note, it is said that there is a tradition of a celebrated temple of the idol Rimac in the valley of Huatica, contiguous to Lima, Tamba, now Magdalene. There are many Wakas still. as the Valley of Magdalene is in the northern part of South America, with access to the Caribbean Sea. The area of the worship of Rimac must have been very extended. In the Hindu mythic system, the demon wolf is Yama. He has a wolf-like belly. Yama is a judge of departed souls. He is in the infernal regions south. He is called Vaivaswata, offspring of the sun, and Dharma, king of justice, and Pitripati, lord of the Pitris. He is Mrita or Mrita or death. He lives in the infernal abode, a deity called Jamapur. His steward is Kasmala, who brings the righteous on self-moving cars to the judge. Yama is lord of Patala. He has a servant, Kashmala, who drags the wicked into hell. This myth, like many of the Hindu myths, is more geographical than those of Europe. Yama is in the infernal regions south. This puts him in South America. In Edulung's Mithridates, there is a province of this name, Jamea. In the description of the language, it is put with the Mainas and the Omagua and Aisuaris before mentioned. All right, these are all indigenous South American tribes. Thus, Yama not only coalesces with Serapis and Pluto in nature, but in ethnology and geography. It will be observed also that he is a navigator. He has self-moving cars or ships, and there is maritime intercourse with other lands. The Japanese have the like god of hell, with the like name Gemma. He has two assistants. One writes the crimes of men, the other reads them. This is in a pagoda near Miyako, much frequented. The most circumstantial account of the demon wolves is in the Scandinavian mythology. M. Bergman gives the details in his work La Fascination de Gulfe. There are two wolves, the one called Skoll and the other Hati. They dwell in a wood to the eastward of Midgard called Jarnvid, which is the abode of a race of witches called Jarnvidjur. This old hag is the mother of many gigantic sons, who are all of them shaped like wolves. The most formidable of all is called Managarm. He will be filled with the lifeblood of men who draw near their end. Again, Soul is pursued by Skoll, but has to avoid Ati, the enemy of Mani. That's on page 208. The Jotnis are zoomorphic. The sun and moon were considered the bull and the cow, or the celestial horse. The demons or enemies of these divinities were wolves. They had the name of Turses and Jotnes. The name Itang Turses means great wolf. The demons are giants, wicked. These demons were the primitive race of the world, and anterior to the race of the gods. They had great wisdom of antiquity, but it was magic. Page 209. They have females, daughters of the wolf Kokuo, derived from Gug. These are friends of the Turses. In Slavic, the issue of the wolf is Volchava. In Russian, it is Volchor. Page 240. These giants are shut up beyond the sea, north and east. One of these wolf giants is mother of the most famous of the wolves, Mana. This mythology is very curious, to say the least of it, but there are many things in it which countenance the theory that it is a mythic description of ancient races in the region now under consideration. All right, so that mythology from Scandinavia, he was just quoting, from those books. He's letting you know they're just talking about literal people from ancient South America. It is observable that the principle of the zodiacal signs as geographical is recognized in the extracts. These wolf giants are beyond the sea east. It must have been beyond the Pacific, as there is no other sea. The wolves are called Itans. the name of a race still in the region. The great wolf Mana has its identification in the province of Maynas. All right, same name. The very large district on the upper waters of the Amazon. The mythology of the wolf in the second Edda is very complete. It will be remembered that the wolf is one of the three children of Loki by Angurbodi, a giantess of Jotunheim. The wolf Fenrid was bred up among the gods, but Tyr alone had the daring to go and feed him. The gods determined to make an iron fetter for him, but Fenrid burst the chain. They then make a stronger chain, which he burst. Allfather then sent Skirnir to the Dark Elves to engage certain dwarves to make the fetter Gleipnir. It was made of the noise of a cat's footfall, the beards of women, the roots of stones, the sinews of bears, the breath of fish, and the spittle of birds. The gods then took the wolf to the island Linguivi in the lake Amvarsner. The wolf stipulated that a god should put his hand into his mouth when bound. The chain of the fetter was drawn through a large rock named Gajol and fastened to a stone called Tuviti. The wolf made violent attempts to break loose when the gods thrust a sword into his mouth. The blood formed the river Vaughn. Two things are wanted here: the locality of the wolf and its father. Take the locality first. The Lupakas are the chief race of the Ayamaras, and they are placed about the lake Titicaca. It is in that neighborhood that the most ancient ruins of Peru were discovered. On the principle of localization, here adopted, the wolf locates himself at this lake. There is a passage in Markham's Travels in Peru which shows that this identification is correct. It is at page 113. A rock called Titicaca gave name to the lake and island. Titi in Ayamara is Kat, and Caca is a rock. Capacalana is a peninsula in the lake. The idol of Capacalana was made of a beautiful blue stone. It had an ugly human head and a fish's body, and it was adored as god of the lake. In the myth, it is said that they fastened the fetter to a stone called Tuviti and an island in the lake. Now, under the wolf, there is no lake except Titicaca, so that must have been the locality of the myths. All right, you see what he's breaking down, giving you a location, giving you a physical place, real people to these myths they're talking about over there in Scandinavia. Now take Loki to see the ethnological position of Loki as father of the wolf, as well as the Midgard serpent and Hela. A few extracts are required. Lok was the name of the stepfather of the Cherokee Indians. Picard says that the Loke was the first man among the Caribs. Look at this, guys. The Caribs are a very extended race in America. They are not only found in the Caribbean Sea, which carries their name, but they are spread over a great part of South America. Adelon says that they consider themselves to be the strangers there, and they say that all other people are their slaves. Tradition brings them from Florida as the Appalachian Indians. Thus, the Indians of North America and the Caribs of South America are, in point of fact, children of Loki, according to the myth. Interesting, huh? The Scandinavian myth of the wolf, Fenrir, is particularly instructive in its application to the present or present subject. It contains in it the exact points that are wanted to be known as to the early settlements of Asiatic races on the western shores of South America. It is very explicit. All right, so again, just a reminder, this guy tries to say people came from Asia and then created all these advanced civilizations and nations, but he doesn't tell you where, he doesn't tell you the origin of those people. because, again, he's still with the whole out of Asia theory and that America was uninhabited. So, gotta dodge the hijack a little bit. It makes the wolf Fenrid to have been bred up among the gods. Then the gods determined to fetter him. He had become too unruly. Then all fathers sent to do it. Then Tyr had the daring to go and feed him. From these details, it is easy to see that the settlements in South America were well known to the Asiatic people, that they had become a source of alarm and fear to the nations of the East, and that there was a general desire to interpose and restrain the colonists. But such was the violence of the demoniacal race that none could be found daring enough to cross the Pacific Ocean to grapple with the demons. In their difficulty, the gods sent to the dark elves, whoever they may have been. But the grand point in the present inquiry is to find out who Tyr was. His tradition is as follows. Gangler interrogates Har, who replies, "Hey, there is Tyr, who is the most daring and intrepid of all the gods. 'Tis he who dispenses valor and war, hence warriors do well to invoke him. It has become proverbial to say of a man who surpasses all other in valor, that he is Tyr, strong or valiant as Tyr. A man noted for his wisdom is also said to be wise as Tyr." The myth then gives the story of the wolf as transcribed above. It would seem that there must be real history comprised in this myth, for in the Coptic zodiac the wolf is substituted by a human being holding in his hands what may be supposed to be snakes and designated Tyrannicorum. The figure carries the name of Tyr himself and is contiguous to the lake Titicaca and the ruins of ancient Peru. All right, and we move on to chapter 28 of this book, and it says here the Inca of Peru. In ordinary books relating to Peru, as discovered by the Spaniards, the Inca is simply the sovereign of a country, suddenly disenthroned from the oblivion of ages. No mortal in the old hemisphere had ever heard of such a person. In the traditions of the country, he seems to have been the outcome of some 7 or 8 generations. In another estimate, the dynasty widens out to 3,000 or 4,000 years. But the Inca of Peru, in the light of mythic histories, is one of the most ancient and well-known characters in the antiquities of the writing nations of the world. It may be said of the Inca, as of the gods, that when he is examined and pulled about to discover who or what he was, he tumbles into a name. But when the name is looked at closely, it swells and swells, till it becomes a history of gigantic proportions. In the endeavor to find out who the Inca of Peru was, by ancient writings, 2 of the curious mythic pedigrees of China must be in part transcribed. This can be conveniently done from the great work of Anderson on national pedigrees. And it says here, number 1, China. 1 Vitae, a giant famous for architecture. He reigned 100 years, it says. He had 25 sons, whose offspring had 116 kings. They reigned 2,257 years. So 118 Tisintzom, last of Vitae's offspring, he built the wall of China. 40 years. 119 Anchosao, root of a new race. 12 years. 120 Tutei, etc., etc. Number 2, China. It says here 1 Fohi, son of heaven, inventor of hieroglyphics, reigned 65 years. 2 Qingnung, invented agriculture. All right, remember, agriculture started here in the Americas, so that whole China thing, this is what I'm saying, guys. He's seeing it in reverse. Huang, number 3, or Huang, lord of all the world, first emperor. The Chinese say he never died, but was carried up from the mountains of Qingxians. That sounds like Enoch. A classic scholar is very likely to observe in the first of these pedigrees that after a race of giants there appears one Anchosau, root of a new race. It is natural for the scholar to ask, how is this? What can Anchises have to do with China? This makes it necessary to study his myth and relationships. Anchises, son of Capys, by Themis, daughter of Ilus, he was of such a beautiful complexion, all right, beautiful complexion that Venus came down from heaven on Mount Ida to enjoy his company. The child which Venus brought forth was called Aeneas. He was educated as soon as born by the nymphs of Ida, and when a proper age was entrusted to care of Chiron, the Centaur. Virgil in the sixth book of the Aeneid introduces him in the Elysian fields, relating to his son the fates that attended him and the fortune of his descendants, the Romans. On the principle of localization adopted in this work, both Anchises and Aeneas must have been of Asiatic origin. Must have. All right, what Asia? This is the farthest east. Anchises is the son of Themis, one of the names of the Virgo, the asterism that overhangs the celestial empire. Aeneas is the son of the goddess Venus, stem parent of the northern regions of Asia. Northern regions, if you keep going a little north on the northern regions of Asia, you end up in America. It was all connected, the farthest east. Asia Major, North America. The Scythians and the Chinese produced two mythic emperors. The Scythians, who became the Saxons, sons of Isaac. Same ones that mixed with the Amazonian women, Again, when Aeneas is entrusted to Chiron, the Centaur, the same principle of localization makes him to cross the Pacific Ocean and settle on the west coast of South America, because the Centaur Chiron or Chiron is embodied in the Sagittarius, and the center overhangs Peru. That this is the true interpretation of the myth is proved by the fact that Virgil puts both Anchises and Aeneas in the Elysian fields. The Inca of Peru therefore must have been the mythic Aeneas. All right, listen to what they're saying. And his own name, divested of the mysticism which hangs about the history, it makes the Inca to be the outcome of a Chinese and Scythian occupation of Peru. All right, so that's the hijack with their tags. Again, seeing it in reverse, where did those nations really come out of? I'm talking about the ancient ones, not what you think of Chinese today. The myth of Anchises has to be compared with the native traditions of the land. The Inca is called the son of the sun. In national heraldry, Japan is the rising sun. This native account of the origin of the Inca differs little from the classic myth. If there is any difference, it makes the Japanese rather than the Chinese to have created the race of Incas. Dodge the hijack again, seen in reverse. Again, in works upon this subject, great mention is made of the Viracocha. Mr. Hoggs, in his valuable work entitled Peruvian Antiquities, says of him, the chief person and one intimately connected with Peruvian history was Viracocha, an apparition who appeared to an Inca calling himself the son of the sun. There was a grand temple to him. He was a man with a large beard, dressed in garments long and wide, with a tunic down to his feet. He held in his hand an image of unknown animal with lion's claws. Mr. Prescott says that the name of Viracocha is interpreted as the foam of the sea. Again, it is said that the last Inca was told by his father that the Viracochas, right, and they say white men, dash the hijack, would come from their father the sun and subject them. This again has to be compared with the tradition of Anchises. If the word Viracocha means the foam of the sea, the inference is very remarkable if not conclusive. Every scholar will notice that the expression foam of the sea is the European origin of the marine Venus. In the classic mythology, Urania, the celestial Venus, is transformed into the marine Venus. In other myths, she is transformed into a serpent. Now, Aeneas is the son of Venus by Anchises. If the mythic Aeneas is the Inca, according to the combination set forth, at the commencement of the present chapter, then the Inca is of the race of Viracocha, just as Aeneas is the son of Venus. In that case, the native tradition accords exactly with the myth of Anchises. There is yet another native tradition, and it is one that is worthy of some attention. Mr. Brinton says that the myth of the Muiscas has a hero, Bochica, or named Quataba, or Sua, white one, right? That's just, again, that's the hijack, trying to make all these people always so-called white. Did they really mean white or pure? What do they really mean in the native traditional languages that they're translating? An appellation which they give to the Europeans. And remember, Europeans ain't all so-called white. So this is what I mean about, you just debunked yourself right here. He taught them the art of building when he disappeared, and he left 4 chiefs and laid down rules. Some mention a distinction between Bochica and Sua. All right, so just want to say Bochica, Viracocha, and Quetzalcoatl is all the same. This tradition is also referred to in Adelong's Mithridates in the description of the language of Darien and the surrounding tribes. Tradition makes a bearded man come to them. One Bochica, a civilizer, right? Bearded man. This tradition cannot be compared with the myths of Anchises in a direct form, but it shows that there must have been more than one civilizer in the northwest of South America. There is yet another claimant for this honor. Brasseur de Bourbourg, treating the bards and chroniclers, says, quoting Las Casas, in all the republics, in these countries there were those that performed the functions of chroniclers and historians. They had knowledge of the origin of all things, touching religion and founders of cities. They kept account of months and days and years. Though they had no writing, they had figures and characters, and thus had great books, so ingenious that our letters are not more useful. I have seen a great part of the doctrine of Christianity in figures and images. All right, and he adds Christianity to everything too. We dodged the hijack. All this is way before Christianity. These chroniclers passed from father to son, and they were attached to kings and princes and priests. The following quotation will show that this practice existed in Peru and is related to the subject in hand. Ovalo, or Ovalle, a traveler in the neighborhood of Quito in the year 1646, after describing the quipos and speaking of the excellent memories of the people, says that Father Diego Torres Boyo, in a place where 4 ways met, saw an Indian who, to the sound of a drum, was singing a great many things all alone in his own tongue. The father called one in his company who understood it and asked him what the Indian meant by that action. He told the father that the Indian was, as it were, the registrar of that country, who, to keep up the memory of what had passed in it from the deluge to that time, was bound every holiday to repeat it by the sound of a drum and sing. And he was then doing. All right, you guys hear that? Just like the bards. He was, moreover, obliged to instruct others in the same way, that there might be a succession of men to do the same thing after he was gone. And that which he at this time is singing is that in such a year there had been there a man called Thomas, who did great wonders, preaching a new law, which in time was lost and forgotten. It is not quite manifest that this ancient country had been visited by some individual or some race that had instructed the people in religion and laws. It may be a curious question who Thomas was. It is most likely that some may jump to the conclusion that the apostle of Christianity had been in Peru and New Granada. Again, that's the hijack with the Christianity. There is no real difficulty in supposing that he had done so, or so done. But Thomas the apostle is quite historical, and can in no way explain a very ancient myth. This story has also to be compared with the tradition of Anchises. Now, Anchises was the son of Capys by Themis, right? That almost sounds like Thomas, Themis, Thomas, the daughter of Ilus. Here is the very name itself. But who is Themis? Themis, a daughter of Coelus and Terra, who married Jupiter against her own inclination. She became mother of Dice Irene, Eunomia, the Parco, etc. And she was the first to whom the inhabitants of the earth raised temples. Her oracle was famous in Attica in the age of Deucalion, who consulted it with great solemnity and was instructed how to repair the laws of mankind. She was generally attended by the seasons. Among the moderns, she was represented as holding a sword in one hand and a pair of scales in the other. Poetical astronomers called the Virgo Themis, who also holds the scales. In this myth, Themis answers to Thomas in name and nature. It may fairly be objected that this comparison of the myth of Anchises with the native traditions of the Peruvian concerning the civilizer of the land gives to the Inca much greater antiquity than that assigned to him by the Spanish writers. But traditions have no chronology. They can be trusted for facts, but not for the time of their occurrence. The Inca and his institutions may have been unknown in Asia and Europe from Plato to Columbus, but there is ocular demonstration from the monuments of antiquity that the Inca and his customs were known in ancient Ethiopia and Babylonia. All right. So, again, Inca themselves said they didn't build a lot of the places that they had gotten there and it was already constructed. There is a much more ancient people than the so-called Inca, but this author just knows Inca. All right. So whatever he's calling Inca, he means a lot of the ancient nations of Peru that didn't call themselves Inca. Even the Inca didn't call themselves Inca. Here are two pictures. The first of that of the Inca at his devotions. He is seen making an offering to the sun of so this is an image, right? Inca before the sun. That's what they're saying. So the sun of a golden vase, probably filled with wine, according to the practices of the Peruvian court, described by travelers. So that's when the Spanish were there, all right? So that is the Inca when the Spanish are there, not the mythical or ancient people he's talking about, that he's saying might be the Inca of antiquity. So were they doing this? They might have been doing this, idolizing things. The second is taken from Sir G. Wilkinson's valuable work on Egypt. It is called Atin Re, or the sun Atin. It was found in the grotto of Tel el Amarna. It is exhibited for comparison with the Peruvian scene. A casual inspection is enough to establish the identity of two pictures, but it is manifest that the Ethiopian picture is taken from the Peruvian scene. They copied it from the Peruvian scene. All right, he's saying they copied it, the so-called Ethiopians, on the rule that decides such questions. The Peruvians' picture is a simple natural scene. It is the Inca in his temple before the sun, while in the Ethiopian design, there are ghosts bringing offerings to him. It must have been drawn by the artist who had copied some historical picture. All right, somebody copied. He's saying this is a copy of an original coming from South America, from Peru. All right, you hear what he's saying? But they had no real knowledge of what it was intended to represent. The historical inference should be deduced from this comparison of pictures is inevitable and plain. There must have been intercourse between the countries. Again, yes, but you're seeing in reverse. And that at a time so ancient as to have been forgotten. Yes, it has been forgotten and seen in reverse. You're right. But there is a similar thing found among the Babylonians, so-called Babylonians. One of the Babylonian cylinders among the pictures given in works relating to Babylonian subjects has the same Peruvian scene, but on a smaller scale and less perfect. Yet the evidence furnished by it leads to the same conclusion and proves that the Inca or ancient people of Peru must have been visited, or again, he's saying they came here, but ancient people of Peru most likely visited other parts of the world, so-called Babylonians, and that at times of great antiquity, the Inca was established in the land. All right, then seen in reverse. And it says here, chapter 29. So, going on to another chapter, guys. It says here, Peru in its more recent form, the sign of Centaurus and its mythology. The centaur is one of the grandest objects in mythological pictures. It abounds to an immense extent in the collection of the monuments of pictorial art practiced in the pagan and monkish ages of the world. Chariots drawn by centaurs and accompanied by the accessories incident to such designs make the most imposing scenes in the great works of Montfaucon and other authors who have preserved the remembrance of the mythic ages. They also abound on the Etruscan vases, and by their vivid and elegant forms they grace the finest specimens of the pottery art. Such magnificent pictures as are classed among this sort of designs are in all probability the works of artists who have lived in times comparatively modern. The elaboration apparent in them and the artistic grouping of the fantastic animals betray a lofty state of pictorial art. It cannot be supposed that these splendid designs appertain to the original country, which gave birth to the conception of the compound figure. The centaur of the vase and the painting must be considered to owe its character to the great nations of the Orient of Assyria and Babylonia, and to the chariot and the charioteer of the rich and luxurious monarchs that appear upon the walls of the subterranean palaces. Even the Sphinx of Egypt must be looked upon as a kind of centaur. Wherever an animal winged and endowed with a human head is found, it must be classed in this category. But the first idea of a centaur must be ascribed to the lands of Peru and Chile, because the centaur has been employed as portraiture for those countries. The creature itself is confessedly a nondescript, a monster, but to understand it, it must be dissected. It is compounded of a figure half man and half horse. All the compound figures of the mythic ages indicate the mingling of races. The centaur is no exception to the rule, and the figure ought to represent two races of men. It is said that neither horses nor bulls were native to South America, and we just caught him lying here, and we're catching this author, we're catching his lack of knowledge, right? Horses originated in the Americas, guys, and there was plenty of horses in ancient America. I mean, we've done the research. We know it's a scientific fact. Horses originated in America and went into Asia, what they're calling Asia today. So this is what I mean about the lack of knowledge this author has a little bit. So we got to dodge the hijack. They were native to South America. Bulls too, we had all that. Mammals came out of the Americas. There are not wanting those who disbelieve the Spaniards when they denied the existence of horses on the Pampas on the discovery of America. So even the Spaniards, this is what I'm saying in my video of the horses, the Spaniards wrote that they saw wild horses, and he just mentioned it. He's saying some people don't believe that what the Spaniards said, that there wasn't in the existence of horses on the Pampas on the discovery of America. One traveler says plainly that the wonderful horsemanship on the Pampas is an indication that horse riding must always have existed there, okay? So we're not doubting this. This is what I'm saying, guys. So you see, we may know more than this author now in 2024. Remember, this is from 1884. So we got to pull out the babies and we dodge the hijack, apply what we already know. But one is not driven to the necessity of proving the existence of horses in South America. Well, I was, and we proved it. The slightest study of this subject reveals the fact that a centaur, a horseman, is not the ancient figure of the constellation. In the Coptic zodiac, it is a bird instead of a horse, and it will be seen that the bird is the real centaur. It is the result of artistic liberties and mistakes of copyists that it is turned into a man-horse. Pictures have histories, as well as occurrences. The earliest form of a centaur is an upright man, holding by the legs an upright lion. The next form is a human figure, with the lower members of a lion, that is to say, a man-lion. A horseman is its latest change. The word centaur has no meaning in any language and cannot be dissected. Montfaucon, Mo- Montfaucon gives the true centaur when he exhibits a member, and the nature of the figure is pictorially explained when he shows a sculptor in the act of chiseling a huge pair of wings for the centaur. It is a curious circumstance, and one strongly confirmatory of the applicability of the centaur to Peru. It is in the description of Peruvian customs that an explanation of this obscure subject is obtained. In the feast of Rami, listen, there was a great procession to the Inca's palace, in which a large number of the people were dressed in the wings of a great bird. In explanation of this custom, it is said that those who appear in the wings of the Centaur do it to show that they drew their origin from these birds. This sentence has the French name of the bird. In English, it is the condor, a bird peculiar to the Andes, with wings extending to the length of 15 feet. This is the centaur. The zodiacs differ in their symbolic representation of the region of the centaur. The Coptic zodiac has the bird, and the Ptolemaic has the man-horse. It will be necessary, therefore, to treat the subject in conformity with that difference. Let the bird be considered first. It might be difficult to discover the nationality indicated by wings without the zodiac. It is the Virgo that is dressed with wings. As the Virgo is portraiture for southern China, Cambodia, and Siam, it may be inferred that the winged men in the Peruvian processions to the temple of the sun preserved in the Peruvian mind the remembrance of former enrichments of population, of a beneficent character from those lands. It cannot be expected that the classical myths will throw light upon the subject of the winged man. Recourse must therefore be had to Oriental and rabbinical literature. If the reader will take the trouble once more to turn to the Ophite Gnostic map at page 80, he will see their names. The upper circles, which seems to belong to the northern parts of South America, they're mystically called Behemoth, have the names affixed to them of Suriel, Gabriel, Erathoth, Michael, and Raphael. All right, archangels here. It is in the book of Enoch, a curious Ethiopic book, written in the Amharic letter, that this subject has to be studied. The book is far too mystical for use in the present treatise. Nevertheless, there can be no doubt at all that if its mysterious contents could be made contributory to the elucidation of the histories of the Atlantic Isle, it would illuminate many dark pages in the antiquities of the human race, okay? The book of Enoch. It is not within the design of the present work to employ the scriptures as elucidatory matter. Otherwise, it could easily be made apparent that the winged men were the missionaries of other days, sent to preach to the spirits in prison, what by the Oriental writers is always called the unity of God and righteousness. What effect the labors of the winged men had is traceable in the religious tenets both of Mexico and Peru, but the subject is too long for the present volume. The first of the winged men enumerated in the mystic diagrams links rabbinical knowledge to profane mythology and serves to bring back the present research to its legitimate medium of study. Suriel or Uriel is describable in Uriel. Uriel is one of the Gorgons who was immortal. Uriel was a daughter of Minos, mother of Orion by Neptune. The latter part of this pedigree belongs to another chapter. Here it is necessary to fix attention on Minos, as to all appearances the classical equivalent for the winged man. The myth of Minos is as follows. Minos, a king of Crete, son of Jupiter and Europa. He flourished about 1,432 years before the Christian era. He gave laws to his subjects, which still remain in full force in the age of the philosophic Plato, about 1,000 years after the death of the legislator. His justice and moderation procured him the appellation of the favorite of the gods, the confidant of Jupiter, the wise legislator in every city of Greece, and according to the poets, he was rewarded for his equity after death with the office of supreme and absolute judge in the infernal regions. In this capacity, he is represented sitting in the middle of the shades and holding a scepter in his hand. The dead plead their several causes before him, and the impartial judge shakes the fatal urn which is filled with the destinies of mankind. He married Itona, by whom he had Lycastes, who was the father of Minos II. This myth is one of a class which may be called semi-mythic. It is real history, so far as belongs to Crete, but it contains mythic histories that belong to the ancestors of Minos II in high antiquity and at the antipodes. The Greeks were in possession of traditions of the whole world and wonderfully complete, but for the want of localization, they are confused. They require readjustment, only to bring out of them reliable history. To understand the mythic Minos, the grandfather, as judge in the infernal regions, he must be put into comparison with the Egyptian Osiris and Amenti. His principal office was judge of the dead, and to rule over that kingdom where the souls of God or good men were admitted to eternal felicity. Seated on his throne, accompanied by Isis and Nephthys, with the four genii of Amenti, who stand on a lotus growing from the waters, in the center of the divine abode. He received the account of the actions of the deceased recorded by Thoth. Horus, his son, introduces the deceased into his presence, bringing with him the tablet of Thoth, after his actions have been weighed in the scales of truth. To Anubis, who is styled director of the weights, belonged this duty, and assisted by Horus, he places in one scale the feather or the figure of Theme, the goddess of truth, and in the other a vase, emblematical of the virtuous actions of the judged. A cynocephalus, the dog-headed, right? Cynocephalus emblem of the abyss-headed god, sits on the upper part of the balance, and Cerberus, the guardian of the palace of Osiris, is present. If the winged man taught to the ancient Peruvians the unity of God, the people must have imbibed that divine sentiment. Mr. Hawk says that before the time of the Inca, the supreme being was called Khan. He is described as an immaterial spirit, created and happy till the advent of crime. Being angry, Khan converted the race into black cats, etc., leaving the earth uncultivated till Pachacamac, the son of Khan, recreated what his father had destroyed. Gratitude to Pachacamac led them to erect temples to him and to worship him with the use of sacrificial altars and pilgrimages. But they raised no temple to Khan, judging him to be a spirit. And the extract mentioned is made of altars. It is remarkable that in the Ptolemaic zodiac, the altar is one of the constellations beneath the Centaur. The religion of the Incas' court was astral, the sun itself in the open air, and a great golden orb in the temple of the sun constituted the object of worship. Before the golden sun was an altar at which the Inca kneeled, see page 276. In the presence of his family, he offered to the sun a vase full of wine. It was in the processions to this grand temple that the winged men took a part. The religion of the Incas court embraced two of the most remarkable forms of worship practiced in ancient Asia and Europe. All right, that's the hijack again. Practice, you mean, in the true old world too. One was that of the first rites or the fire rites. So again, now they're saying it like, oh, like making it seem like they're worshiping gods and doing like all this pagan stuff. Was it all really? Is all this being misinterpreted? Is what I'm saying. We just talked about the fire rites of the American Indians and the Israelites the other day, right? Either way, it says here one was that of the fire rites with the everlasting fire and Vestal virgins, similar to the fire rites practiced both in Persia and Rome. The other was that of monasteries, with buildings and cloisters like those of the old continent. In connection with these religions, there were 4 feasts, vast and splendid, during which were lamb offerings and great feasting. Dr. Robertson offers that the most singular and striking circumstance in the ancient Peruvian government is the influence of religion upon its genius and laws. The whole system of civil policy was founded upon religion. The Inca appeared not only as a legislator, but as the messenger of heaven. Hence it followed that his authority in the most extensive sense was unlimited and absolute, and to this circumstance it was also owing that all crimes were punished capitally because they were not considered as transgressions of human laws, but as insults offered to the deity. If the winged men succeeded in their sacred mission to preach to the spirits in prison the sublime religion of the unity of the deity, it is quite manifest that the judges of the infernal regions, that is to say, the lands at the antipodes, succeeded also in inculcating on them the principles of righteousness. All authors who have written upon the subject commend the social and political institutions of the Inca's government. They may be termed model laws. Witness the following extracts from Reed's Cyclopedia. All the lands capable of cultivation were distributed into 3 shares. 1 share was consecrated to the sun, and its product was applied to the support of religious rites. The second belonged to the Incas and was devoted to the support of government, and the third, being the largest share, was reserved for the maintenance of the people. No person had a right of exclusive property in the portions allotted to him. He possessed it only for a year, at that expiration of which a new distribution was made according to the rank, number, and exigencies of each family. All these lands were cultivated by the joint industry of the community, and the people were summoned by the proper officer to the fields and performed their common task, while songs and musical instruments cheered them to their labor. In consequence of this mode of distribution, selfish principles were restrained and extinguished, and each individual felt his connection with those around him, and the state thus constituted might be considered as one great family, in which the union of the members was so complete and the exchange of good offices so perceptible as to create stronger attachment than subsisted under any form of society established in America. It need only be added that if the laws of Minos and Foroneos were based upon institutions such as these, there is no wonder that ancient books have referred to them with commendation. In the Ptolemaic zodiac, the modern provinces of Peru and Chile are delineated by the Centaur. a very large figure corresponding with the wide domains of the ancient Inca, said to have extended 1,500 miles. The centaur is a horse with a human head. In the classical lexicon, there are many myths of this nondescript. The shortest is as follows: Centaurus, a ship in the fleet of Aeneas, which had the figure of a centaur. As this is taken from the Aeneid, it may refer to the Mediterranean Sea, but it would suit the ship Argo exactly, as that vessel stands off the coast in both zodiacs. The ship Argo, with its figurehead and numerous oars, makes a fine stalking centaur, carrying the Oceanides on his back to all parts of the world. Remember, the Oceanides coming out of the Americas, as they, showed in this book, broke it down, the mythology and the geographical locations. The centaur hangs upon the myths of Menalipe and Ixion. Take Menalipe first. Menalipe, a daughter of the centaur Chiron, beloved and ravished by Aeolus, son of Helen. She retired into the woods to hide her disgrace from the eyes of her father. And when she had brought forth, she entreated the gods to remove her totally from the pursuits of Chiron. She was changed into a mare and called Othero or Cairo. Some suppose that she assumed the name of Menalipe and lost that of Osiris. She became a constellation after death called the horse. Some authors call her Hipe or Evipe. Admitting the correctness of the present allocation of this myth, there is something about it that must be pronounced very remarkable. It is said that on the discovery of Peru by the Spaniards, they were told that the natives attributed their civilization to one Oelo, whom they called the son of the sun. Now in the present myth, Menalipe is loved by Aeolus. This resemblance of names may be accidental, but Euripides says that Jove's or Jove's nephew had his son from Aelo, right? Oelo, Aelo. To avoid detection, he was changed to a horse and put in the stars. This looks as if the Greeks had preserved the name of the Peruvian civilizer in their national traditions, and it makes that civilizer to be the centaur himself. Aeolus is here called the son of Helen. In another myth, he is king of storms and winds, presumably a navigator. Helen again is the son of Deucalion, who is a son both of Prometheus and Minos or Minos. Menalipe is the daughter of Chiron the centaur, who has been found embodied in the Sagittarius portraiture for Central America. He was the instructor of Aeneas himself. If so, the first Incas of Peru must have been in Central America. Listen, before they created a dynasty in South America, I told you they traveled down. They came down, and when they got there, so-called Inca found other nations that were more ancient than them there. They even said, hey, we didn't build these temples. They were already built. They were already here. Chiron was the son of Saturn, one of the most eminent of the Titan race, so that the centaurs must have formed with the Nahuas or Toltecs, one great and beneficent family. In the classics, the parentage of Centaurus is also referred to Ixion. The following is his myth, slightly curtailed. Ixion, a king of Thessaly, son of Phalages or Leontes or Antion, he married Dia, daughter of Aionios or Deionios. He promised his father-in-law a present, and being unwilling to fulfill his promise, he invited Deionios to a feast and murdered him, and he was shunned and despised by all mankind. Jupiter had compassion on him and carried him to heaven, where by Juno, in the form of a cloud, he became the father of the centaurs. Afterwards, he was tied to an everlasting wheel in hell. On this myth, it may be observed that in the localization of myths, it is necessary to keep in mind that the Greeks have misplaced the order of events in their collection of national traditions, forgetting the migrations of their ancestors, but finding that the muses of history had been heaven and hell, the domicile of their ancestors. They have reversed the order of the history and put them in the unseen world after death. That mistake corrected real history as the result. In this myth, the parentage of the centaurs is referred to Jupiter and Juno, ancient gods that have no existence in Greece. In their splendid collection of worldwide traditions, the Greeks have a great many centaurs, Philyra, Bolus, Nessus, and others. It will not be necessary to trouble the reader with them. The myth of Centaurus himself is as follows. Centauri, a people of Thessaly, half men and half horses. They were the offspring of Centaurus, son of Apollo, by Stilbia, daughter of the Henus. According to some of the centaurs were the fruit of Ixion's adventure with the cloud in the shape of Juno, whereas others assert the union of Centaurus with the mares of Magnesia. The battle of the centaurs with the Lapitae is famous in history. It was represented in the temple of Jupiter at Olympia and also at Athens by Phidias and Parrhasius. The origin of this battle was a quarrel at the marriage of Hippodamia with Pirithoos, where the centaurs, intoxicated with wine, behaved with rudeness and even offered violence to the women that were present. Such an insult irritated Hercules. Theseus and the rest of the Lapitae, who defended the women, wounded and defeated the centaurs, and obliged them to leave their country and retire to Arcadia. This myth brings a study of the centaurs in relation to the constellation to a sudden termination. If the centaurs formed a part of the population of Thessaly, and if the map makers have rightly placed the sign of the horseman, the centaurs must have traveled to the extremity of the earth, as the Anglo-Saxon race have done in modern times. Yet this is the teaching of the pictorial map. One half of a horse overhangs Thessaly, Thrace, and Arcadia, and the other half overhangs Peru. The same teaching arises from the ship Argo. The Argonautic expedition is the central point of ancient history. The classic myths exhibit the ship in European waters, but in the zodiacs, it is put in the Erythraean Sea, if not in the Pacific. It is impossible to reconcile the traditions of the ancient world, except upon the admission of some great maritime movements, by which the inhabitants of the two hemispheres mingled their blood and histories. Not only must the Oceanides of North America and Central America have crossed the Atlantic Ocean and conquered Libya and Europe. We're talking about North Africa when they say Libya conquered, right? Just like as Plato said, the Atlanteans conquered Libya and all of Europe and Asia. As has been shown in earlier parts of this work, ancient Americans, whatever name they're calling him, whatever myth is applied to them, these are real people. Remember, it gets a little confusing when they start talking about he's trying to make a point here, guys. He's trying to show you the true old world and where's the origin of these myths, all these people and geographies are really at. So if we got all these people from, as he said, Central America, North America, crossing the Atlantic Ocean, conquering North Africa and Europe, as has been shown in earlier parts of this work. But the people of South America and the Inca's court must likewise have crossed the Pacific Ocean, and coming up the Erythraean Sea has spread themselves over Asia, Africa, and Europe, going both ways, right? Like we said, out of both ways, matching what Graham Hancock was saying, the connection there with South America and the Southeast Asians and other parts of the world, right? Other parts of the world. And that's the end of this chapter, guys. We're gonna go ahead and end it right here. We read 3 chapters. Try not to make these videos too long so people can actually sit through them and it can make sense. You can absorb the info, watch it a couple times, break it down with the history. I know a lot of people like or know about the myths of Europe and Asia. So, you guys break it down, see what he's trying to tell you here. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed the reading. We got about 2 or 3 more chapters in this book and we're done. Just wanted to get through it, read a little bit today. Thanks for reading with me. All right. I hope you guys are overstanding. Remember, there's a whole playlist. We've read every chapter all the way from chapter 1. We're on we're gonna go to chapter 30. That's next. So we've read 29 chapters. So you can catch the playlist, Researches into the Lost History of America. That's what it's called. Go to my playlist tab, and you'll be able to see every episode if you missed it. We've read a lot of good drop in this book, so you can catch it in order, right? Because I don't always read them back to back. It's been like almost 2 weeks or 3 weeks since I read the last chapters. All right, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Understand what he's saying. It's all applying to ancient America. All these myths. You see how many more myths, how many more legends. Just remember everything we've researched about mythical lands and all that, and Atlantis and all these myths. I mean, look, it's just more and more and more applying here, and how a lot of these nations carry the names of these mythical people, or geographical locations in America carry the names of these mythical places, right? Well, I'm gonna give you your time back. Thanks for sticking around all the way to the end, hearing me read. I really appreciate you guys doing that. Thanks for all the support. And again, I hope you are enjoying these readings. I just want to get through these books. I do have a plan for the future as I break down. We're gonna go back and reference some of these videos, specific time spots, sections of these videos to correlate with other research we're gonna be doing. And that's why I'm doing this. I'm accumulating content right now because we're going to break this down in future videos, and we're going to, with other researchers, we're going to apply to it. All right. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawa.